call the meeting to order of the December 9th meeting of the Eastham Finance Committee. It's called to order. This meeting will be video recorded. It will be available on Channel 18 and on the town website, www.eastham-ma.gov. And pursuant to the emergency order of Governor Baker, this is a Zoom meeting. So welcome aboard all visitors and whoever's watching it and the members. I appreciate you all being here, and I hope you all had a safe Thanksgiving.
Funny as hell.
Excuse me, Jerry, is Russ
I
French
know,
on
I
here?
saw the regular one.
No,
Yes.
I'm not here.
I can see you. Keep your tab.
Russ is here. He's hiding somewhere.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay.
I see plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight, yeah. Minutes. I sent the minutes around. Does anyone have any comments, changes, objections to the minutes from our last meeting?
Jerry?
Yes, Russ.
On page 2, second paragraph, it says, first sentence says, regarding the repaving of Phase 1 roads, the town would like to do so as long as the funding is there. My recollection of the comments that we got was that we are going to do it, and we will find a way to pay for it, either, you know, from the savings from Phase 1 or from Chapter 90 or from some method of taxation. Let me know if I'm wrong, but that's what I remember.
Steve, do you have any recollection on that?
Well, I tend to agree with Russ, and the only reason I'm saying tend to agree is I thought there was some ambiguity because Jackie spent a lot of time, or Rich, I don't recall now, describing the savings that we've had in prior phases, and that would likely continue and likely to be available for this purpose. But then, well, Jackie's here now, so she, you know, we could ask her. But I recall her also saying what Russ said, that we'll find a way to do it if those funding wasn't there. So I kind of agree with Russ's interpretation. And Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you're nodding yes.
So what did I miss? What was the first piece?
So that's the minutes, and the minutes as written says that we go back to the Phase 1 roads for repaving if the funds were available. And Russ has raised the question that well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Russ, but his recollection was that we were going to find a way to do it.
We were going to do the repaving, hopefully with savings. You know, it's going to take time to find out, but if not, then we'll go to Chapter 90, and then we would go from there to, you know, whether we needed to do any form of taxation. But my recollection, Jackie, was very clear, which may be really murky, but it was very clear that we were definitely going to find a way to repave all the roads, Phase 1, Phase 2.
Yes, I think the point, the Board of Water Commissioners and the CPC committee and myself, we feel morally obligated to repave the Phase 1 roads as we have to the same standard that we've done the Phase 2 roads. It's just a matter of not figuring out how to do that and how to pay for it at this moment in time.
Right.
Okay, what about if we change that sentence that will repave, that the town will repave Phase 1 roads and just leave out the
As long as the funding is there, yeah.
right, just cut that out. Just we'll repave Phase 1 roads, put that in the minutes that way?
Yeah.
Is that okay, Russ, for you?
It's fine with me. I mean, I'm, you know, if I get to discuss this with any of the friends that I may see occasionally, I want to be sure as to, yeah, this is definitely going to be done,
Yeah.
or maybe is, I don't want to overstate the situation.
Right. So that's good. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes with that amendment to drop, as the funding is, Tom?
Jerry, I have another possible correction.
All right, go ahead.
Under Rock Harbor,
Mhm.
in the second sentence, it says 888,000 of the 1.3 million budget has been spent.
No.
And I think that's wrong. Jackie's nodding her head. It's just the opposite. 888 has not been spent.
Oh, okay, so we had a not in there, huh?
Yeah, not.
That would simply do it.
Thanks,
Okay.
Tom. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's all I'd do.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Any other, before I jump, excuse me, Russ, you have another one?
Well, it's not a change, just a question. After, you know, the bottom of Rock Harbor says Justin Post, our new building commissioner. Who is that? What is that position? Is this something new?
No.
Building inspector.
It's a new person in the position, and the state calls them building commissioners. It lets you know, or it's supposed to let you know, that he has the highest credential within the building field,
Okay,
So
as
that's
opposed to a building inspector that may or may not be able to be a building commissioner.
right.
all right, that's good. So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes with the two changes, one by Russ and one by Tom?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Who seconded? I didn't hear the,
Steve.
Steve, okay, sorry.
Hey, Jerry, do you have it on gallery view?
Yeah,
Okay, because then you can see hands raised and stuff. Okay.
yeah, sometimes but I'm on a smaller thing, so I don't see
Gotcha,
it.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so let's go for approval. Let's start with Russ,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
let's see, Mary.
Yeah,
Let's see, who am I missing? Who's not here yet?
Rick Knight is in here.
Oh, George.
Yes.
And Jerry's a yes, because I think Rick is not here, is he?
Right.
No.
who made the motion for those two, Jerry, please?
Russ made the motion,
I made
Steve
the motion.
seconded, and the vote was 7-0.
And Steve Cole made this,
Yeah, yes.
okay.
Okay. Thank you. Now we move on to the next item, and thank you, Chief, for being here. Sorry the minutes took a little longer than usual. I apologize.
No problem. Good evening.
Yeah, we'll start, just bring you up a little bit on what's up, and Tom is the person who's raised it, so I'm gonna give him the floor, and when you just kind of raise it, Tom, then you can turn it over to the chief, if you would.
Sure. Well, to recap, as we had before, this issue or question came about based on an article that I'd seen in the Cape Cod Times that talked about the difference in charges, ambulance rates among the different Cape Cod towns. And we had some subsequent discussion about that. Rich has given us a ton of information, and I believe some of that already came from the chief, and I believe the chief might have some further info to share with us tonight.
Okay, Chief, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Just a quick note here. 2014 was the period when they set these rates. It was prior to myself coming into office in 2015. So we have made no changes in these rates in 2014. We looked at a change approximately 2 years ago when we were looking at increasing revenue within the town. And we looked at all rates across the town, from building permits to dump fees to ambulance charges. I took a look at the surrounding towns that I compare us to in volume wise and capacity wise. And 4 of the towns were at the same amount that we're charging across the board. So we decided the best thing at that time was to leave the rates at that point, and those rates have stayed there. Quite a few towns have gone past us now and increased their rates. There are 3 or 4 towns that are below us, and there's 2 towns that are the same as there's another town and us that are still the same rates. So we haven't had an increase in rates. We do not use a collection agency. I've had some experiences in my career with taking care of people that were unable to pay their part of a bill. Not in Eastham, in my past job where, you know, they really got to a point where their health condition was bad and they should have called us earlier, and their statement was, you know, I didn't call because I owed money on my last bill. So I've always had that in the back of my mind that I would never want to put that pressure on anybody. The billing company that we use, Coastal Medical, I looked at them and I asked them, I said, out of your clientele, they have 60 clients and they do all of our medical billing, which is a real specialty. The codes for the insurance companies, what you can submit for Medicare, Medicaid, really makes up a conglomerate of really complicated issues. Out of the 60 clients they have 20 that go to collection. Now, if anybody, if this Board of Selectmen and the town administrator opted to go to collection, you can set your parameters. If you wanted to say across the board that you weren't going to go after collection on anybody over the age of 65, you can do that. You can do it on people with Medicare. You can do it on, you don't go after anybody that's not a, you don't go after any taxpayers. You go after just non-taxpayers. There's a whole gamut of ways you can do it. We have a pretty good collection rate, 94.3%. Orleans goes to collection. They went approximately 2 years ago, and they're at 97%. And for the 3%, I don't know if it's worth the bad PR or that one patient that says, you know, we can't pay. I know that's just my opinion, and you know, being in the fire emergency service for 40 years, I've seen a lot of it, and I just don't have a good feeling about collection agencies. They're going to take 33%, and then out of that, you know, there's a certain percent you're not even going to locate or find out who they are, and go after them. So I think the system works. I think it works well. Ambulance revenue has increased from approximately $510,000 when I got here to over $700,000 now. And that is completely based on the clientele that you transport. I couldn't tell you next year what my ambulance revenue is going to be, because if we transport a Medicare patient, Medicare sets a rate. We could bill at $10,000 a run. Medicare is going to pay us $469 for an advanced life support run. That's it. And out of that $469, the patient is responsible for 20%. So the patient's going to receive a bill for $70 or $80. Medicare is going to pay $400, and that's what we get no matter what we bill. Mass Health, which is Medicaid, we can't go after them at all, and they even set their rates lower. They're at approximately $250. So basically, you know, we're talking 84% of our clientele fall under those preset rates of Medicare and Medicaid, where we have nothing we can do. So we looked at the numbers. We had Coastal run the numbers, and the best we could. There's, like she said, there's so many different codes and ways to do it. She came up with, we had 200, and let me pull my numbers here. We had approximately $200 and some odd thousand that could be owed to us over the last 3 years. If you broke it down and you went to collection and took the 33% off, and you went for the no contact people, the people you can't get a hold of, and this is going after everybody. This is going after Medicare people, anybody that's using our services. We could get between $25,000 and $29,000 in return, and that's in a perfect world if we could go after everybody that is out there. I don't know what to say. For that kind of money, you know, with a collection rate of, you know, $700,000 to $800,000, I don't know if it's worth putting somebody in a position. that they may feel that they're unable to pay and not call. I'm not using that as a threat. I'm using that as something that I've seen, and it bothers me. So I think we're doing well. And, you know, we can increase our rate so we can go up to what Orleans is. Orleans has an effect. If you don't pay that remaining balance and you go to get your beach sticker or you go get your dump sticker, you're denied until you pay the balance. And I don't think the town of Eastham wants to get into something like that. I know I don't. So that's my 2 cents worth on it. Any questions? Rich can pipe in now. Rich has a
Yeah,
wealth of
Chief,
information
let
on
me
it.
just add into what Ken's been talking about, because he did a lot of work getting some numbers together with the billing company, and he and I sat and went over some of them. So he mentioned 74% is Medicare. So the balance bill is somewhere between 70 and 90, or was it 80 and $95? That's all that the user of the service is paying, and 74% of our runs. And 74% of last year was 832 transports. So 74% is about 616 of those cases. The bill to the patient, which could include resident or non-resident, was about $80 to $95. 10% or 83 transports were Medicaid. That means no balance billing. So those patients had no balance bill. We got paid the rate, and that's it. But the number, I don't think the chief mentioned, was on top of those two, on top of that 84%, 12% of our transports were covered by commercial insurance. And here's where it gets a little dicey. In that commercial insurance, as far as we understand it, is responsible for 100% of that bill. Less, of course, we don't know the exact insurance that everybody has or the plan design of each plan. So of course it'd be a copay or a deductible perhaps, which is circumstantial. But by and large, the commercial insurance is responsible for 100%. And in talking to the billing company, we understand that even though they're responsible for it, they don't always pay it, and they will send a bill they'll send a payment saying that's all they'll pay for the service, even though they're responsible for it. And then it goes to the insured to come up with the balance. But as we understand it, if the insured were to call the insurance company, typically they're going to end up paying the rest. The insurance company would end up paying the balance of that bill because that's what they're supposed to do. So that's another 12%. So we're left with approximately 4%, which translates to about 33 of our transports last year, were private pays. And I'd sent you an email right after the last meeting, and it runs the gamut. You got a basic life support run to an ALS run, but just the quick average that I took on the runs was about $2,500 on average. So we got 33 people on private pays in various stages of collection. To hone in on that number, we received in 2020, fiscal year 2020, about 47,000 out of the 750 grand approximately from those private pays. Of that amount, a good amount of it, maybe 7, 8, 10 grand of that might have come from the private person, but those people were reimbursed by the insurance company and they're just passing along the payment. So out of that 47, just for talking purposes, there's something less, call it 40 grand perhaps came from the individual. So that's a very small amount of the overall. And so those go to some of Steve's questions. It might not be as detailed, Steve, as you want, but at the moment, that's what we got as far as a mix of the payments. And then the final thing I just want to mention, and it was in the email I sent to you with the listing of the last fiscal year billings and collections by month with the outstanding balance. We are up to about $743,000 of outstanding ambulance bills at the end of June of 2020. The prior year was about $654,000. And so I would suggest that so that increased about 88 grand over the course of the year, and that's pretty typical what I've seen in towns and fire districts when they have this. But those balances accumulate over a number of years. And to Ken's point he said that perhaps it's about 200,000 over the last 3 years. That would mean that a large portion of that balance goes back quite a bit further. And so that might indicate we should review some of those and write some of those down or off, as the case may be, and get it to a more current outstanding balance. And decide how we might want to proceed as far as any further collection activity or no collection activity. Chief, you didn't mention, I'll leave it to you to talk to if you want, but right now the policy is we send out, was it 5 notices of, or 5 bills, and then a final notice being the 6 with the letter saying that, you know, there's potential that we could do some further collection activity, but we don't proceed beyond that notification.
That's correct. They send out 6 bills, and the last one is a pink copy, a letter that says, please notify us with your insurance information, and so we can process this. And at that point, that's the end result to it, if they don't pay. And also to note here is, I don't have people knocking at my door complaining about ambulance bills. I think since I've been here, I might have 1 or 2 complaints from the public about an ambulance bill. I probably deal with maybe 4 or 5 hardship letters a year that get sent to me. I had one last summer from an exchange student that got hit on his bicycle, and he basically told me, I don't have any money, I don't have any insurance. I look at those, I don't chase them down, and I excuse them. And I think I excused probably $3,400 last year in hardship. So it's not a big number, but I'm not getting complaints. I know the article came out. There was, talk about it was gonna bring up some points, and but I don't think. Excuse me. I think we're doing well, and I think we're providing a good service, and we're not chasing anybody, and I feel good about that for that small amount on the return.
All right. Mary?
I have a question, Ken. What happens when all of our ambulances are being used and somebody calls in 911 and you end up using an ambulance from another local town?
Right. That who does the transport gets the rate, the charge rate. And just another tidbit to add here, I show you all read in the paper, Orleans Cape Cod Healthcare is opening up an energy center in Orleans, which is just like Fontaine.
Right.
I know when I was in Howard, our running to Fontaine was tremendous, and they still do. They're in there probably a couple times a day at least. I think we're going to see our increase in runs go up due to that in Orleans. Orleans is only capable of handling so many incidents, just like we are. Howard is fortunate. I think they have 4 ambulances now, so they can handle a lot more in-house. But I looked at Brewster's numbers, how many times they go into Fontaine, and if you average it out, it's probably 20 to 25 times a year that they're going in to do transports out of Fontaine. And those are high priority calls. If they're leaving Fontaine and going to Cape Cod Hospital, they're a cardiac call, difficulty breathing, something like that. So they're an ALS call that's billed out at a higher rate. So I can see an increase in us responding into Orleans to help them out to handle that load too. So that's another thing that's going to be coming up. But who does the transport gets the funds from the insurance.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? Yes, Stephen.
Yeah,
Steve first, then George. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you very much, Chief. And I'm a little, and Rich, I'm a little confused by the numbers and percentages and all that. So let me ask something a slightly different way. If you haven't already told us, approximately in any given year, how much are we actually collecting, not from Medicare, not from Medicaid, not from private insurance, but from citizens in Eastham?
$47,000 is what,
Okay.
and I don't know where it's from. That could be from somebody from New Jersey. That could be a Medicare copay. That could be a private insurance. The other thing too is, as Richard mentioned, a lot of times these insurance companies send the check to the individual that's insured. And what they do then is they have to write it over. So within that $47,000, there could be a $3,000 check, and there's several of them. If I look at my list, $2,700, $2,800, $3,000 that you as the individual wrote a personal check to the collection, to Coastal Medical, and you received a check from the insurance company for that amount. So the total we collected, we can't break it down. She'd have to go through a million runs.
So the thing that was concerning me, and it's not why Tom brought this issue up for us, but it's what concerned me about it, is all the people who, when they get a bill, pay it. And there seem to be sort of, and not all of them, you know, are rich. Some of them just, they pay their bills. It's kind of, you know, they might struggle. And they're paying their bills and other people are not, who also may be able to afford it or may not. We don't know. And I was trying to kind of understand whether there was some way to address what to me is a plain inequity. And one possibility, and in this complex insurance system, this possibility might not be there, but maybe we should just say for anywhere from 30 to 50,000 a year, we should just have a policy. We're not going to collect it. Not from, in other words, we would say that the general revenues are going to pay that amount. Now that may not be allowed in the insurance system, I don't know, but it would eliminate the inequity between people who pay and maybe can't afford it all that well and those who don't pay.
Yeah, and I understand that, and that's my thought too. I would sure wouldn't want somebody, you know, some 85-year-old senior citizen that owes $100 and doesn't have the money to feel they have to pay. But the problem is, how do you separate that individual that gets the check from the insurance company for $3,000, you know, the 28-year-old, and he signs it over to us? I don't want to lose that money. You know what I mean? So
I do know what you mean.
how do we separate it unless you set a policy that says we're not going to go after anybody 65 or older or anybody on Medicare? That's the only way I can see us, you know, taking that senior population out. That, you know, but I can't afford to lose, you know, $30,000 worth of insurance money that's coming from a policy somebody's paying for, and it's not coming out of their pocket. You know, I still need that money.
I kind of been
I'm
thinking
kind of
about
concerned
that.
with a policy that is not generally well known and somebody pays when their neighbor doesn't.
Is there a way to put something in the bill? Is there a way to put some statement in the bill saying if you have a real not a disadvantage, but a problem, financial
Hardship.
thank you, Rich. A hardship of some sort, to contact us?
No,
Well,
that's-
they do that when they do that when they go to the billing company. That's how I get those hardship letters. Somebody will call or the billing company will call and say, hey, we've been trying to get, you know, collect from you or whatever. And they'll say, we don't have the ability to pay. And they'll say, write a letter to the fire chief explaining your hardship, and we'll see where it goes. Those are the ones that we write off, the $3,400 or $3,500 that I wrote off this year.
I think we could do a better job, Chief, because we can control what goes into that letter, and perhaps we could send out that letter, you know, at invoice number 2 or 3 instead of 6, to let people know. To Steve's point, I don't know that we can just say we're not going to balance bill people. I don't think we'd want to say that, and it might not be appropriate with the insurance providers. But I think we could maybe do a better. So I think the issue is on the collection policy. Maybe we could just do a little bit of better job of letting people know if they're being asked personally to pay the bill, that, you know, please contact us. And by the way, we have this hardship provision that we'd be happy to talk to you about. And if we could do that sooner in the process, that might alleviate some of the issue that Steve's referring to.
Well, yeah, but maybe that would be a help. I appreciate that. But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter whether they have a hardship. For probably sound reasons, you've made a judgment. We don't want to go after the folks, no matter how many bills we send them, and whether or not they claim a hardship. So
The big thing here, though, I think we have to look at the 84% that are Medicare and Medicaid patients. That's our big group. You know what I mean? We're dealing with very few, you know, 12% of the private insurance that we may be going after, you know. That's a big number of senior citizens, and those old people over 65 is at 84%. So I understand what you're saying. I agree with Rich. I'm not a fan. I didn't set the 6-letter policy or anything. That was all done prior to. But I'm in agreement. I don't know why we don't send out, you know, 3 bills and then the final letter and have something in there instead of the verbal hardship, you know, calling up saying I don't have the money. Put something in there. If you're unable to pay the bill, please notify, you know, the coastal medical billing, and they'll forward it to me if it's a hardship case. but it still doesn't take care of, I understand what Mr. Cole's talking about. It still doesn't take care of that. But I look at the number of people we serve, the 84% that fall under that. Doesn't matter what we do. It's
Well, I must say the 94% successful collection rate makes this lesser of an issue than I
Right.
expected it would be.
Right.
We're doing pretty well,
What
actually.
does the
And I-
94% represent?
Julie?
Does the 94% collection rate mean that we get 94% of the amount we bill?
No.
Or does it mean that 94% of the people that we bill pay us something?
It's 94% of what we're able to bill for. Like I said, if you got to take the Medicare rates. If we bill out for $3,000 and Medicare, let's just round it off, is only going to pay $500. That's what we have to base it on, because we can't get any more, even though we billed out for $3,000. So if I look at my, let me just get my form here. If I look at 1 year of billing, okay, and this is last year, we billed out for $2,096,205. Okay, adjustments are Medicare, Medicaid, insurance companies at a percentage that they've cut down. We adjusted our bills $1,235,294. Our credits that we collected was $731,167, and I wrote off, and this is hardship, $35,046. So
$3,500.
$3,546. If you take what we billed, the $2,096,000, and you subtract the adjustments from it, the $1,235,294, that's a big chunk of what we sent out for bills. But that's automatically taken out because of Medicare, Medicaid set rates. So
the 94% is after you make the adjustment.
correct,
It's not what the original bill was.
correct.
It's 94% after adjustment.
What we can collect.
Right. Well,
Right.
it makes the numbers more understandable. I mean, this is a classic problem in all of medical billing. You know, hospitals, doctors, clinics. Rarely do people, medical providers, get paid the full amount that they quote the bill, because they know that their billing is not a real number. It's what theoretically they would charge, but it's really a bargaining point that they use in negotiating with insurance companies. And we don't negotiate with insurance companies, apparently. Is that correct? We don't have any direct agreements with insurance companies where we say we will accept payment from your insurance company of X dollars and we won't balance bill. We don't have any of those, correct?
A lot of the insurance companies set their rates by the area. So they take a look at Boston and draw a 100-mile circle around it. I'm not saying that's what they do. And they say for an ALS chest pain call, they're going to pay $1,800, and they set the rate, even though we send them a bill for $3,200. So they have already set their rates by the area. They call it, area pricing, what they're going to get by the area.
But do they require us, do any insurance company say you cannot balance bill?
I don't know that.
Because,
No, well, on those, George, representing 12% of our calls that are commercial insurance, as I understand it, those commercial insurers are supposed to pay 100% of that bill that we send them. Absent, not accounting for co-pays and deductibles, of course. But, so there is no negotiation, there is no negotiated rate. They're supposed to pay what we bill. And I think they do. It's just that sometimes they try to pass it along to their insured, and we're not in on that. And that makes it more difficult.
Hold it. Steve Cole, you're muted, Steve.
Thank you, Jerry. Rich, why do you say they're supposed to pay 100%? What makes that so?
That's my understanding. They don't negotiate with us or any other towns. I believe it's, and I hadn't had a chance to track this down with the background or the reasoning for this is, but I believe it's through the, it was a division of medical insurance or something, a state level agency that sets, when you provide insurance, there's certain things that have to be covered. And emergency transport, I believe, is one of those. And they can't unilaterally decide that they're going to pay Eastham one amount and another town a different amount. They're not negotiating with us on those rates. It's just a covered service that if you're going to offer insurance, you got to provide. And so when we talked to our billing company, they kind of indicated that these insurance companies are supposed to pay 100% of the cost of our bill. But then they also indicated to us that it's not uncommon that they try to pass that along to their customers. And sometimes if they get called on it and the customer calls them up and says, hey, I got this bill, why isn't it covered? They end up paying the rest of the bill.
Sounds like insurance fraud to me, but that's another story.
Yeah. All right, does anyone have any more questions on this? I think
Jerry?
before we go, Tom.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for Rich, actually. Rich, in that email that you referenced earlier that you sent to us, you mentioned, you summarized and said, so it seems clear that our overall ambulance program costs exceed the level of our billing and collection, right?
Right.
So, and that includes, if I go back to the article in the paper, and that particular paragraph that talked about Eastham billing for an ALS run with mileage being about $3,800. That $3,800 that she's talking about, she whoever wrote the article, would only apply to the 12% commercial. Is that correct? Am I interpreting that the right way? Because Medicare and Medicaid would be.
Well, I think the chief could say for sure, but I think it applies to everything. It's just that Medicare and Medicaid are only going to pay what they pay.
Only going to pay.
They unilaterally set the rate.
We send the same bill to everybody, regarding that, but then when Medicare comes in, the ambulance billing company kicks it down to the approved Medicare rate, plus the approved Medicare mileage, which is less than we charge for regular insurance.
Okay, so it gets back to what was my original thing when I saw the article, which is if that's how we bill and how we get paid, collect and everything, and that's based on that number of 3,800 or approximately, how is it that someone like Wellfleet can bill $1,195 for what they say is the same run? Are they losing a fortune on this thing? Or I don't see how the numbers square up.
Chief, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but Wellfleet and Eastham are pretty similar in this regard. They're probably getting the same, and they're also similar populations, so probably very similar percentages from Medicare and Medicaid. So for the same run that they bill, whatever they bill, that we bill $3,300 for, Eastham and Wellfleet are both getting the same $500.
Right, we're all getting the same thing.
And like the ambulance company said, they said you can set your prices wherever you want. You can say $5,000. You're not going to get any more.
You're going to get paid that. That's it.
That's right. And all you're going to do is you're going to look at what you didn't collect instead of being, $2,096,000. I mean, instead of being $1,235,000, it's going to be $2,135,000 because your rates are up and you can't collect that money because Medicare's telling you we're only going to pay you $469 or $89.
Well, you might get more from the private insurance.
Yeah, you might, and the Village of Barnstable. I checked with my one of my cohorts down there, and they discussed going to a collection company last year or the year before, and they decided not to because they didn't want to get into the PR thing. They increased their rates, hoping to recoup that loss that they're not collecting. Like I said, there's a lot we can do there. I just don't want to go out and set a general policy to go to collection on everything.
No, but I wonder if our rates haven't gone up since 2014, maybe we could raise them a little and get a little more private insurance money.
Yeah, like I said, two of the four that I compared ourselves with 3 years ago, we were all in the same exact numbers. Yeah. They've gone up. Orleans and Brewster just went up in the last couple of years. Not a lot, but they went up. Yeah.
Kent, how often does Medicare change its rates?
This last one was 2020 was the current one that I have. Let me just see if I got a date on the thing here. 2008. Well, let's look at. I have the dates on Medicaid, which is Mass Health.
Yeah.
And 2008 was the last one listed, and the current one, excuse me, is 9 of 19. And so, you know, they're almost 11 years according to the sheet that I
12
have
years.
here,
Yeah.
and the increase there. Just for the example, Orleans, we're at a BLS, which is basic life support. We're at $1,056 is what we charge. Orleans went to $1,127. So they went up, you know, 60, 80 bucks, whatever it is.
$70.
And on BLS, we're at $3,037. They went up to $3,241. And they took their mileage per mile. We're at $29.76, and they went to $31.69 per mile. So they bumped it up. Brewster seemed to do about the same thing, but Howard stayed the same as we are. And there are a few below us. Dennis is below us, Yarmouth is below us, Chatham's below us, Mashpee. It doesn't list Wellfleet, Truro, and P-Town in this rate here. They must not have submitted the information. But West Barnstable, Hyannis, Sandwich, Orleans, Katuitt, Barnstable, and Nantucket are all above us.
Right. Anyone have any other questions for the chief? I want to thank you for your time, Chief. I appreciate it. I don't know, these were just questions of why. We didn't have any discussion that we should charge more or go to collection or anything of that sort. This was very much a gathering information and understanding what's happening. And I understand when you have 74% Medicare and another 10% Medicaid, there's not too much more you can do getting a lot more money. But we will think on this, and if we have further discussions, we may call you back. But I really appreciate the time and the effort, and thank you. Does anyone have anything else they want to say on this subject right at the moment? Okay.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Have a good holiday.
Yeah. All right, now we'll turn, the next item is tea time. And Mary, you would ask for just an update. And I think that Jackie knows more than a lot of us on the update on tea time. So I'll turn it over to you, Jackie.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm just going to give you a brief update because we actually haven't fully updated the select board. So Lauren Barker, our economic development planner, just began at the end of November, and she's joined the Tea Time team backing up Paul. And right now we have a market study that is going out, if it's not already out, to RFP. It's an RFP for a firm to do a market study. And when Paul and Lauren were going over that, they broadened it a bit. So it's not necessarily just for Tea Time. We've broadened it to Wellfleet and our commercial district. To Eastham and our commercial district, and also to the Outer Cape. So we're looking for what businesses would fit here. And then the other dynamic group within the Tea Time Committee, there are 3 subcommittees, one doing infrastructure, which that committee is working with Paul around traffic, the Cape Cod Commission study on traffic, getting more access into the site. What can we do about easements? How about septic and how much load can we carry? All of those things. They haven't made too much progress because, of course, what we put on the site sort of drives a lot of that, but we're getting all the bones done from that group. The other is economic development. Of course, they're waiting for this market study to go out. And again, it was delayed a little because it should have gone out in the summer for after town meeting, but it went out in the fall and stuff. And then I think the most dynamic group, of course, I'm on that subcommittee. Within the Tea Time Committee is the Community Development Work Group. And we're looking at sort of the triumvirate of what community functions need to be there in terms of reorganizing and relocating the COA and the rec program into a community center, and what would that look like and what would it have in it. We've done a lot of research. This is a really hardworking subcommittee. And so each meeting, we meet twice a month outside of the regular tea time committee meetings. The subcommittee meets twice a month as a working group and has speakers and different experts coming in to advise us and guide us in one way or another. But so it's looking like we're honing in on what the needs would be for a community center, at the same time taking a look at what kind of housing might be incorporated on the site, whether it's housing. We know we want something creative and village feeling. We don't want the number of units at Nauset Green. We want it to be more workforce related. We are thinking about apartments over artist workshops or over some other thing, or under some other, combined with something else, not just standalone housing, although we're considering that too. We're also looking for unique ways to fund that through some of the other towns have been successful in coming up with private foundations that they form, that the community buys into to create housing, not aside from the town. So we're looking at that. And then, of course, we're always looking for that economic anchor. And a few of you, or I had a couple of members of the Board of Selectmen, a couple of members of the Tea Time Committee call me after the Cape Cod Times article came out on the Orleans site, because everyone was blindsided by that. I mean, even Outer Cape Health was unaware that they were negotiating that. So we did reach out to Cape Cod Healthcare and say, if you want to come to Eastham, we have, a flat parcel, you would save land costs, we will work with you, because it would be nice to have a commercial anchor to this property in some way or another. So just so you know, we did reach out. We haven't heard from them yet, but, and I'm trying to think of what the other third thing is. It's, of course, Lower Cape TV is looking for a new home. And we're also looking at things like co-working spaces with great internet access that we could rent or have used by working people that are here because of COVID too and don't have a quiet space at home, that sort of thing. So one of the things that the market study is going to look at is the results of COVID on our economy, on our business world, and what that's going to look like, and try and project out, are people really going to return to work full time when they can to an office building, or are they going to do more remote work, and what will that mean, and all of that. So that's going to be part of the market study. We also have a timeline to do some, now that Lauren is on board, not only the economic analysis side, but community outreach. We're simply waiting to do the community outreach piece until we had some concepts to test out in some way with the community. We didn't want to send out another survey because we get all these, pages and pages of, well, I'd like this, and this would be great. And those are great ideas, but unless it fits into the scheme and it's possible, we don't need those ideas right now. We need more concrete things. So we have just engaged Leslie Sandberg of Rose and Sandberg out of Provincetown to do some consulting with the Tea Time Committee to work on that public outreach strategy and what that will be and how we'll engage the public on this site and in this next 3-month process of sort of unveiling and tweaking. And then we hope to have a formal presentation to the select board and to you guys around the 1st of April, sometime in April.
Thanks, Mary. Any further questions you have, Mary, or anyone I'll go to you first, Mary, and then anyone else.
I'm just wondering if you're contemplating, and maybe you don't know this yet, looking for monies for the next fiscal year regarding this project.
We don't know yet, but if we are, it will be around design money. So it wouldn't be for a capital project in terms of building, but it might be to hire someone to help us conceptualize a design. So
And-
that's
And
possible.
if I remember that the 490,000 under the family support, 100,000 of that was for workforce housing. Would you anticipate that being used in some fashion with this project?
Well, yes, but we can't use that. How that's structured is that it stays in a fund until we have a project to,
Yeah.
so we probably wouldn't use it for something like a feasibility study or a design concept plan, but we might use it for tea time 5 years from now when we're building something. Yes. Because by then we'll have $500,000.
That's right. That's it.
Andy-
Thank you very much.
Mr. Cole,
Thanks, Jerry. Do we have a liaison to the Tea Time Committee?
No.
I'm away from the Finance Committee for a number of years now, so my question may be silly, but do we have liaisons to other committees anymore? We used to have them to most committees.
You have formal representation on many committees.
No, I understand that.
Yeah. But not tea time.
Because I think it would be valuable so that our ability to coordinate and let the Finance Committee know what's going on a regular basis and what items are likely to be money items that we'll have to consider might be useful rather than have last minute, with 100 other things going on. This is a big deal, the tea time thing. Lots of good things are being considered and a lot of money might end up being needed.
Yeah.
Just my thought.
I think right now it's a creative working group that's doing research and making recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. And we're really honestly, and I know you guys will hate hearing this, but we're not thinking about money right now. We're thinking about things conceptually and trying to then hone it down on what concepts could be practical, could be feasible. That's like part 2. And then part 3 would be how do we put a package together that can be funded? And that's why I think it's so important to get a commercial anchor in the building, because I think it would be so much easier to try and figure out a funding package if we had someone who was paying us rent every month or, whatever the arrangement was. But I understand it was not in the, this is, as you know, the select board's baby, and they want to keep, tight control over it. So it's an advisory board to them, and any recommendations will go back to them, and then it'll go forward from there. So they may take this piece and then transform it into something else once they have a concept too. I don't know. But we did have for the Tea Time Committee, Steve, we had 26 applications for 9 seats. The selectmen expanded it to 11. So there are 11 people out of those 27, and none of the Finance Committee applied to be on it, which is why the Finance Committee isn't represented on it.
That's a different point.
Yeah.
Whether we have communications and a liaison.
Yeah.
I just would like to see the Finance Committee being real-time knowledgeable about every big deal project in the town. So that's just one person's.
It's a public meeting. You're welcome to go. You're welcome to, we may have some turnover on the committee, although we haven't yet. But it's really, we're pretty fabulous. I think they're a really good group of folks, and they're doing a great job. And basically the meetings, Scott has been very careful. The meetings are exactly an hour of the full group, and most of the work is being done in the subcommittee meetings. So the 1 hour meetings are really just reporting, regrouping, making big decisions and moving on. And so I think that that could be something that the finance committee could monitor fairly easily.
Jackie, do they meet on a regular basis at a regular time?
Yes, I can't remember. It's at 5 to 6.
On Monday?
And it's once a month, and it's
Oh,
coming up,
Thursday.
I want to say, what?
Thursday.
I think it's Tuesday or Thursday.
You know, just a note of caution about this concept of the finance committee being represented on the tea time committee. You know, there's the potential for a conflict of interest, because you got one person who would vote as a member of the tea time committee who might not agree with the majority. That goes to the select board. Then the finance committee looks at it. That same person now gets another shot at voting as a member of the finance committee. So
George, that's not what I suggested, just to be clear. I couldn't agree with you more. And maybe the problem is, not the problem, but we don't use liaisons anymore. But liaison is basically not a voting member of the committee. He's not part of the committee. It's a link between the committee and the finance
So
committee.
I
The
understand.
select board has the same kind of thing.
I understand what you said, but some of the comments during this discussion did identify, gee, there may be openings on the tea time committee, and nobody from the finance committee applied for the tea time committee. So there was a concept floating around in the last few minutes. And I just wanted to put out there my caution that even if those things were to happen, that it wouldn't be a good idea
Gotcha.
for a member of the finance committee to be an official member of the tea time committee.
Thank you, George. I appreciate what you're saying.
All right.
But
We can-
Jackie's comment that these are just open meetings and when they're noticed, you can go, really is probably the right answer to all of this, so.
Yeah.
The other thing we can do is do a quarterly update on the tea time committee for the finance committee. Because really we are intentionally moving very slowly. There's going to be a flurry of activity in the next 3 months because we have 2 big things going on. We're trying to engage the public and we're trying to get a sense of what is needed for business activity in the Outer Cape. But those 2 things aside, we're moving very slowly and deliberately. So I think a quarterly update to the FinCom would do it. And Scott would be glad to do it too, if you know, either one of us, or Paul Ladd.
Yeah,
You
well,
can
one
see
thing,
you can see it has our focus because it has a lot of, it's highly staffed now. We have, 2 regular staff people that are attending every meeting, so.
yeah, I think, in one sense, Jackie, you're, at least in these early, early stages, we can schedule, updates and unless you don't feel adequate to update, I mean, you're at our meeting. We don't have to pull Scott or pull Paul in. So we can do that. I will, Mary brought this up. I will, try and schedule, kind of quarterly updates on tea time. And of course, you're at every meeting. And if anything is coming up between those briefings, you can raise it or tell me, and we can invite Scott or Paul or someone here to do that. Does that sound all right to the committee?
I think that's a good idea, Jerry.
So,
Okay.
And
All right.
I get it, it's really important. And the one last thing I wanted to say is, I know the site is a mess right now, and I am working with the Mickles Corporation head person to figure out what they're gonna do as they leave to make the site as flat and looking as good as it can. And then the committee will probably be doing some planting of wildflower seeds so that we can get the meadow back a little bit while we're waiting to do something else to it.
Okay. Now, is that going to end the middle of this month, pretty soon, right?
Yeah, he's saying they have another week or 10 days, that's it. So they should be
Okay.
done.
Mhm. Thanks. Anything else? All right. Next item, we'll go to Rich, which is a brief financial update on how things are going in the town. Rich?
So I'm gonna make it brief because you had some big topics, but I did want to hit one high-level point. The largest element of concern for this fiscal year, we've been talking about local estimated receipts, and I gave you an update last time on those. And the short-term rental receipts, how those are coming along pretty nicely. But the one thing that I did want to stay on top of was the property tax collections, because our tax bills went out and we had our due date, and we're about 2 weeks past the due date at this point. Not quite, but just about. And what our collections look like versus what they normally look like. And at this point, we've sent out our first half bills, and 2 weeks past the due date, we've collected 95.3%, which is a pretty good collection rate, although it is a little bit lower than our prior year collection rate, which was about 97.75. So we're a couple points behind where we were last year. So nothing in talking to our tax collector overly concerning, but something that bears monitoring as we go forward through the rest of the year. I don't think we'll end up particularly short, but just in order of magnitude, if we ended up being 2% short, that translates to about $500,000, a little bit over $500,000. And so that has a longer term impact. But like I said, we're in the early stages of the first half of the bill, of the tax bill. So I don't think we're going to ultimately end up at that spot.
Rich, can I just ask you a question? What is the rest of the monies due equate to above the 95.3? What are we still owe?
So
Monetary amount.
the first half bill was 14,052. So 735, and so if we collected 95.3, that means we got 3.7% so far uncollected.
Right.
Times,
No, 4.7.
so it's about 600 grand or so.
Mhm.
That's the 4.7?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
So,
Well,
Not great news, but and again, nothing that's overly concerning at this point. There's still plenty of time to go, and the collection activity is ongoing as normal, and nothing out of the ordinary taking place for our tax collector. So I think we're in, all things considered, in good shape, and local receipts are holding their own.
Rich, is this creating any kind of cash flow issue?
Not at all. No. Matter of fact, we did do some short-term borrowing because of the late issuance of the tax bills, as you might recall. And
Right.
that revenue anticipation note of, I think it was $3 million, we did just repay that. And so we don't anticipate, once we get the tax bills out, we're in good shape. Just, if you're running late and doing that, that's where you have the potential problem. So we're in good shape that cash flow wise.
right, and our tax bills were, now the due date is later than it had been because the tax bills went out so late, but looking at it from the point of view of the prior due date compared to the time that the tax bills went out in the prior time, are we currently today within that time? I mean, but let's say you sent the bills out last year and you had a 2-month period to pay the bills. Are we still within that 2-month period from when we send out the tax bills this year? I don't know
No,
if you
and
understand what I'm
that's,
asking.
one of the reasons. So what I looked at is collections through 2 weeks after the due date. And so I looked at collections 2 weeks past the due date from last year, which was about a month or so earlier than it is this year, versus 2 more weeks past the due date. But we haven't quite had 2 weeks. We're 2 or 3
Right.
days short of that at this point. I think 2 weeks is Monday.
Okay,
So we haven't quite got the full 2 weeks.
right.
But that's the typical measurement that we have. So, what's collected through the due date and then right after, because there's usually a
Yeah,
flurry of things.
Yeah, my question was, when we sent what was the time period between sending out the tax bill and the due date last year, and the time period between sending out the bill and the due date this year? I think it was shortened, though. I'm not certain.
Yeah, that's a good point. The due date's always 30 days after the issuance, but I think to your point, we probably had the bills last year available before we actually sent them, because we set the rate a little bit earlier, which we weren't able to do this year because of the late town meeting. So I think you probably have a good point there, Jerry. But I'll follow up in that and email that out, what those dates were.
Yeah, because that could have, we're trying to hope effect. Does anybody have any other questions for Rich on the financial update? Hearing none, we'll move on to, now, Mary, we assume, Mary, I think we all voted that, Mary, you read the whole 165 pages and are all set on the capital plan here. But we're going to turn to Rich, and who sent out. Rich, thank you very, very much for sending out that summary last week. I think it was it was helpful. It was definitely helpful. But also, thank you for sending out the underlying information, even if it turned out to be a huge amount of data. It means something, I think, to all of us, that the town, you and Jackie are willing to share the information with us, and we really, truly appreciate it. And so thank you. So you have the floor, Rich.
And I don't want to get short thrift here, so it was 180 pages. So about another 14 pages.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I need credit for it.
Good point.
And the reason I do that,
We had him on a 20-page-a-day schedule,
and the reason I do that is it's not just me putting this together. Our department heads did a great job putting in some time and effort. I gave them a little bit more direction and asked a little bit more of them this year than perhaps in the past. And they did a good job putting it together. And all that is in way, and ultimately, hopefully we'll have this available to the public at large, if to the extent they want to see it. But it's the way to generate some credibility for what we're doing, because we do have significant asks, and we ask people basically to have faith in what we're doing. And I want them to know that there's a process, and that there's a prioritization that occurs, and some contemplation and some consideration. And these things just aren't thrown out there for the sake of throwing them out there. There's a lot of work that goes into this. And so the departments have really indicated, and that's the kind of the back ends of that 180-page book, is all their requests and their deliberations and their documentation as to why they're asking for what they're asking for. And so that goes to the process, and that's I just want to make sure I mention that. That's just important to know that there is a process to this. And the other thing we introduced to the process this year, and it was for a few reasons. One reason is because we're contemplating the Green Communities application, which requires that we do some work on our fleet as far as fuel efficiency standards. So we need to generate data for that. But also it's just good practice. So if a big part of our capital plan is vehicles or fleet type equipment. And we want there to be a process associated with that, so that when we ask for a piece of equipment or for a vehicle, it's because we need one, not because we want a new toy or a new truck. And so that fleet assessment process kind of documents a methodology. And Rich Bienvenu didn't come up with it. I kind of co-opted it from the National Public Works Association that put that out, that rates your vehicles based on the type of use it has, the mileage, the maintenance costs, and things like that. To rate a vehicle as whether it's a good replacement candidate. And each department did go through that and get the information to identify that. And of all the things that we're asking for, as far as vehicles going, there are all good candidates for replacement. So that, just kind of bolsters, not that they didn't know that already, but it gives, more documentary evidence to people that might want to look into that type of thing. It was a common question I got in, other communities over the years. And then a real big factor in being able to put together this plan and fund some of the needs that we have. So I thank the committee for supporting and town meeting and the community for voting to authorize it, was that $400,000 override for capital plan. That went to funding this year and over the next 5 years, substantially our recurring fleet replacement needs and departmental equipment needs. And so that we have those secure. And when I say those are the things that recur annually and are significantly impactful to an operating environment. So for example, police department's tough to be effective if they don't have patrol vehicles that they can get out and about and patrol in or respond in. And so the big part of that money went to the police department vehicle replacement program, so that every year we've systematically set this up so that every year they're replacing 2 vehicles and replacing their patrol fleet over a course of 3 years, and then having a drop down schedule so that some of those, 1 or so of those vehicles are repurposed for other purposes, and with everything being replaced over a 9-year cycle. And so having that funding in place allowed us to do that. And likewise, police department requires radios, fire department requires radios and certain medical equipment. We kind of systemized that so that every year those departments are getting that necessary operating equipment that if we couldn't otherwise provide for it because we're lacking in free cash in any particular year, would really be impactful to an operation. And so what we're left with are really the big ticket items. And the chief's he's here, he's got a couple of them, a ladder truck and a Quint that he talked about in the past, ambulance replacement. Over on the DPW side, we'd be talking about heavy equipment like loaders and large dump trucks. And so we hopefully will be focusing on those bigger ticket items. I do have, I'll share my screen. Oh, Mike didn't provide for that. If Mike's still listening, Mike, if you could enable that. And I'll share my screen. Because I sent you the summary presentation. I highlighted some of the big ticket items. Unfortunately, didn't print it out for myself. I was anticipating seeing it on the screen. Let's see, I can pull it up though. So in addition to the couple things I just mentioned with equipment, the other big ticket items, some general government land exchange and implementation funds. So that has to do with land exchange with National Seashore and the Rock Harbor implementation. DPW facility is looking for $75,000 for some upgrades. We're also looking for—
Rich, you got the co-host, so I think you can share the screen now.
Oh, great, okay. Do that. There we go. So one of our approach, kind of identified the FY22 likely recommendations, and then in this other column indicate how there might, how much of an ongoing need there might be for some of these things. But right now we're looking for money for DPW. Silvio's got a plan to do some updates and upgrades to his facility. Looking for $75,000 out of free cash this year, and we're anticipating about that twice again, but probably out of Chapter 90. There is a big need, and that's why it says to be determined for beach bathhouse assessments. And in the past several years, we have appropriated some amounts of money, but it was clear that those weren't going to be sufficient. And so what we are looking to do is a comprehensive assessment of the beach bathhouses so we can address that issue a little bit more comprehensively. Facilities maintenance is probably our biggest challenge as far as funding our capital plan going forward. We have several facility several facility budgets planned for this fiscal year. And Silvio has done a good job of getting engineering reports and compiling all the needed repairs and maintenance. And there's a lot of deferred maintenance. So you see $289,000 on tap for this year funded out of free cash. But in the near term, the subsequent 4 years, we got a significant amount of maintenance that Silvio has identified as needing to be done. And so when we look at the summary, that'll stand out to us. Likewise, we have some relatively nominal amount of money for roadways and stormwater work. And actually in this year, it's almost all stormwater. Hopefully, as Jackie mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, our phase 1 roads will be accommodated through the water project. However, once you get out past a few more years, that is an area that we're also going to have to start paying attention to, is how do we keep, now that we've redone all our roads as a result of our water project, how do we maintain them and keep them up to date? A lot going on at the transfer station. It's been a very busy operation and generates lots of tonnage of trash and recyclables, and so there's a need for some sanitation equipment. And of all the people, Silvio probably did the most comprehensive job. And in your book, you've got several pages of pictures kind of indicating why some of these things need to be replaced. These are largely containers, and a lot of the ones that we have are rusted or have holes in them, and they need to be, can't be repaired, so need to be replaced. And then ambulance and Quint. The Quint isn't a new one. This was recommended last year, but dropped as part of our response to our budgetary constraints from last year. But we do anticipate that, similar to last year, that a capital lease to purchase this vehicle as well as the ambulance, and that both of those lease payments could be supported out of the ambulance fund. And then finally, as far as the ones I have listed here, is the boat for Rock Harbor. Both the fire department and DPW/Natural Resources has indicated a significant need for a response unit, boat for Rock Harbor side of our waterways. We have the Nauset Marsh and Inlet covered with a different boat. This would be on the Rock Harbor side. You can see, and this is an interesting discussion, George, maybe you'll appreciate, these are all free cash. We got the 2 at the lease. This is the one that perhaps we would do as an exclusion. So, and the reasoning there being that if the community agrees, because we don't have free cash to cover all our needs, and perhaps this is a late minute change, perhaps we could, depending on how things shake out.
Okay.
But if the community sees the need for this marine response boat, and they're willing to support it by the way of a capital exclusion, then I think that's a good way to approach that.
Rich,
So,
Rich, can I ask you,
Mary?
under the facilities maintenance, what facilities are you referring to?
well, I'll have to go to the detailed list, Mary, if you don't mind.
No, never mind.
And I will in just a minute. I think it'd probably be useful. But I did want to summarize, these items here, which we're looking for this year, and identified some subsequent costs. And matter of fact, I skipped one.
Yeah, you skipped one.
Wastewater planning is a big one. Not so much for this year. This is kind of like a gap year, so to speak. We got some work to catch up on and do need some money to continue and complete that work. But that's all going to lead to bigger decision-making in the upcoming year. That's going to determine a significant amount of spending that'll have to occur in years, 4, 5, and beyond. And right now, we just kind of have a placeholder of this $3.5 million. We'll have to see where that ends up. But that's a big issue as far as financial impacts that we'll have to be on top of. But it's a little premature to know exactly what that looks like.
But aren't we going to get some money from the short-term rental for that?
So that's definitely going to be part of the discussion. So Mary and I had a discussion today just on a specific budget issue with the department about how we want to use short-term rental money. And I understand there was a consideration that when this came up, that a good portion of that would be going towards funding of wastewater.
Right.
So that will certainly be something that we'd have to contemplate, perhaps use some of that for that. And we also participate in the new Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust, which will provide some funding to us. So again, we kind of need to know what the direction ends up being on this. Do we end up needing to do can we do a decentralized, privately owned alternative septic system solution to our needs? Or do we have to do a bigger pipe central treatment plant type solution to our needs? And do we do that on our own or in conjunction with Orleans or another community? So a lot remains to be seen on that. But as far as the plan, the 5-year plan that's in place now, all the items, here's the amount that those add up to in total. And here's the suggested funding at the moment for that. And there's nothing here that I foresee as overly problematic, other than I would focus your attention to the free cash line. And this is why the 400,000 override was so important, is you could see that as we're getting upwards of $1 million of free cash in any given year, that's quite a bit to be expecting that our free cash to support year in and year out, especially over the course of time. You know, you'll have good years, but you also have bad years. And so to the extent we can minimize this by identifying other funding sources, that will kind of secure our funding plan for the rest of the capital. And so I guess on a big picture, that's what I think probably the Finance Committee should be focused on, is what's our free cash generation and how much of that free cash can we be applying to our capital plan on an annual basis. Here's some of the things that are on the horizon. I would also suggest to you that I didn't include in here the water project, which was in the detail that I sent you, but I excluded it out of here since it was kind of already baked into people's thinking. But on the horizon, as you've been talking about tea time and perhaps a community center, that would be this item here. It didn't show up in the 5-year plan, but one of the things I did for planning purposes I asked all departments not only to put down things in their 5-year plan, but any significant items of over $100,000 to put in a thereafter field, just so that we had a sense of things that might be coming down the pike. And that would be certainly include a community center or a senior center type renovation. Rock Harbor is in the plan, but we're anticipating that substantially funded through grants. Wastewater kind of remains to be seen, the various sources that we'd pieced together for that. I wanted to put this one on here. Jackie mentioned it about perhaps integrating something like this into a tea time property. And it's kind of a baby of mine from Yarmouth and in Falmouth that I've worked with some folks. But I put it in the plan just to throw it in there, but then I took it out. The funding myself, understanding that we have more important needs. But I think I can get some grant funding to further this cause, so I'll work on that. We did put in the plan, not for FY22, but in beyond, just as a placeholder, identification of the multimodal path construction. This is making like a complete streets, providing for transportation for pedestrians, bikes, and vehicles. And there's a lot there. And so the thing I put here is how do we accomplish all those things? Free cash can't handle all that. And so a big thing is managing our debt and identifying other funding sources. And so I mentioned the water infrastructure, the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust. Community impact fees came up just the other night at the select board's meeting. What some communities are considering using for wastewater is what's called a water infrastructure fund. And I just want to brief you on it, just so you've heard of this in case it comes up, is that's a fee similar to the CPA surcharge that you're allowed to add up to 3% property tax surcharge. But instead of going for the Community Preservation Act, it goes for water infrastructure or wastewater infrastructure projects, and it sits in a separate fund. So that's a potential source. But of course, if we can manage our debt and time our projects accordingly, I think we've got a significant opportunity. And that's why I presented this chart here that shows here's our existing debt down here. Here's what's coming on board due to the water project with our peak of about $7.2 million in a couple years. And then in 26 and 27, we start seeing some significant drop off. And so one of the strategies we could employ is try to find a level of debt and debt service that we're comfortable with and supporting in our budget. And just for the sake of argument, let's say it's $7 million right here. As this debt drops off, we can issue new debt to maintain the fund, our debt service levels at an even 7 million, and use that money to finance future projects as they come along. That requires us to, time these pretty tightly, but, it's not undoable. So that's my quick and dirty of the capital plan. In the packet I sent, there was a list that indicates all the requests, and then a column that indicate potential recommendations and of how much. And so in the next couple of weeks, I'll be going through with Jackie when we're looking at our overall revenue picture and finalizing that list. And that what would make up a recommendation to the select board and the finance committee for the capital plan. And you'll get that as a separate document. Ultimately would be going in front of town meeting.
Mary, did you, I think, saw you had your hand up. Go ahead, Mary.
I did, Rich, on your list of also on the horizon, what is the status of the Nauset estuary issue? I saw where Orleans passed in their most recent town meeting, monies associated with that. Where are we, Pam, in that?
Me.
Oh, yeah.
Jackie?
Eastham declined to invest any money in the Nauset Estuary permitting process. And we had that arrangement with Orleans all along, but they forgot. And so they asked us for money again and we said no. And so they are paying for 100% of the permitting costs moving forward. But we do now have some figures for the cost of the dredging and the annual cost for the maintenance dredging. So I think before we sign a memorandum of understanding for part 2, the actual dredge or submitting the actual permits, the select board kind of wants to take a step back and take a look at that because, environmentally, we're not sure that we want to move forward with this. And there is every possibility that Orleans will say, we'll just pay for it. So I think we're sort of taking a step back and having some meetings to rethink that. But for right now, it's not a financial burden on the town, but we're getting costs for the dredge in excess of $3.5 million for a one-time dredge, and then $1 million a year for the topping off of the
Maintenance.
Maintenance, yeah. Mhm.
and it's, it's dredging 2,200 cubic yards behind a barrier beach.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
What we determined was 240 dump trucks worth of sand.
Mm. So do you think, do you understand at this point that Orleans would pay for the dredge completely for the dredging too?
No, but that's what we're starting to get concerned about.
Mm.
Yeah. Russ?
Yeah, Rich, could you put the very first slide you had back up on the screen? A couple of
Sure.
question and a comment, or a couple of comments.
This one here, Russ?
Yeah, that's the one. No, that's not the one.
Probably
No,
significant
yeah,
items.
this one.
Yeah.
You've got up there.
Excuse the significant items on it. Right here?
Yeah, that's the one. Just a comment on the beach bathhouse assessments, $40,000. I think that's a pretty high priority if there are any kind of issues with them, because a significant part of our revenue in this town is due to the status of our beaches and the facilities with them. I mean, so that's just a comment. Down on the roadways and stormwater, I would like to put my dibs in for all $25,000 on Campground Road. They carry signs at the end of Walker Road and Pine Street every rainstorm. The drainage up there is, stormwater drainage is awful.
Duly noted.
Yeah, that's just a,
All right. Any other,
Jerry, I have a question for Rick.
George, yes.
Um, the 5-year capital plan eventually will have to go to town meeting to be voted on. And I'm wondering how we're going to answer the question of the significant difference between this first iteration of a new 5-year capital plan when you compare it to the 5-year capital plan that went to the town meeting just a couple of months ago. The numbers are enormously different, particularly in the first 3 years. This new plan, just to round the numbers to illustrate, in fiscal 2022, the new plan is 17 million. The one that went to town meeting was 3 million. The next year, this plan has 15 million. Last year's town meeting was 6 million. And then in 2024, the current plan is 16 million. And town meeting a couple of months ago, it was 9 million. So those are enormous differences. And I'm just wondering how we're going to be able to explain to the citizens of Eastham why there's such a big difference.
Well, the main thing that you're seeing in there, and it's probably a question I would have, your direction of how you wanted to see it. And what you just read off in those big numbers, that includes the anticipated bonding for the water projects for phase 2, B, or C, D, and E. So that accounts for the vast majority of those differences. Those are about $15–16 million each of those bonding. And so I put it in there for our consideration and review because I didn't want to drop it and just not indicate that it wasn't happening, because obviously it is, and it impacts what our future borrowing is, which is why I did that debt service slide. So when we get to finalize this, perhaps we don't include them because it's already been decided and it's happening. It makes it a little bit more comparable, but I'd be happy to go through and reconcile why they're different. I can tell you, I don't shy away from people giving me bad news. And my directions to the department heads was, I want everything. I don't care whether you think you got a grant for it. I don't care whether Chapter 90 covers for it. I want to know it. And then I'll put in that Chapter 90 is covering it, or your grant's covering it, or whatever the case may be. But we need to know, and I think it's important that the community knows that those things are occurring and that we get this benefit of, Chapter 90 funding from the state, for example, that otherwise, if it wasn't there, we would have to be on the hook for it. And so there is a little bit of a difference in how this has been pulled together than in prior years. That does include things that might not otherwise, typically in lots of places don't include things that aren't being asked of the town meeting to fund. And likewise, what new is I did ask them to include future considerations for things just so we could get them as a placeholder, like a community center and wastewater. They are in the plan now when they weren't before. They might not be within the 5-year plan, but they're on the overall plan that I sent to you to indicate for our purposes that we need, even though we're not coming up in the very near term, they're on the radar and we need to start considering them. And knowing that you've got a $10 million expenditure 6 years from now might influence your decision of whether you want to spend $1 million today. So that's why, kind of that reasoning.
And if I can chime in, I think to give George the deeper background, when I came on board in 2017 and even working with Sheila, I realized that part of the strategy that she had for passing the very important water project, and I'm not criticizing her for it, she put all of her capital there. And it deferred a lot of maintenance from buildings. So in 2017 and 18, we hired a firm to go through the buildings and do a study. And then we didn't have enough money to fund that, so we deferred it. So one of the tasks for Silvio and for Rich is to create a real plan, not an imaginary placeholder plan or a plan with deferred maintenance where we just keep moving things down the road, but a true plan of what it would cost so that we can at least know that we're deferring things, or we can at least, you know, show the data that suggests why we need something. So this is a more true, real projection.
And I would say,
We do have catch up to do.
and I'll just show it real quick. I don't want to belabor the point, but Jackie's right. That's probably a big part of the difference is building and facility maintenance. And I do want to show it because Mary asked the question, and it is an overarching concern, or, you know, that something we need to stay on top of. Right here. This is the cumulative townwide plan, and you can see down under here, this is based on Silvio's work and the facility studies that we had done. All these items here are facilities maintenance. And there's quite a bit here, and you can see all the funding sources for these throughout the 5 years. It's all free cash. They don't have a dedicated funding source. And so that's a big amount of money. Let's see, next year, we're looking for well over, whatever that is, almost $300,000, $400,000 just for facility maintenance, if we did all this. The reality is a lot of times you put down what you think needs to happen, and then when it comes time to fund it, you can't do it all, and then you end up deferring it anyway. But at least you know that's what you're doing.
Right.
But these free cash amounts up here are the biggest contributor, and I go down to the bottom here of how our funding sources, of why we have close to $1 million need in some years on free cash. That's what I think this committee really needs to consider longer term is that a realistic expectation that free cash is going to support this level of funding for our facilities? And if it's not, then what ends up happening is we end up shortchanging our facility. We defer maintenance on facilities.
It ends up costing us more in the end.
Right. And so that's a great finance committee level discussion.
Did you send us this, Rich? I don't.
Yeah.
I did, and I did send it as a separate file too, so you didn't need to dig through the big book to find it.
And one more thing, I wanted to go back to when Mary was talking about the short-term rental tax money. The select board did make a policy decision right around when the rental tax was passed, to dedicate that money, not to put it into the operating budget, to keep it separate and to dedicate it to building reserves, catching up on OPEB, and then once reserves and OPEB were in good shape, one of the things, then it all goes into capital, roads, wastewater, and housing. That's where they wanted to put the money then. Now that was 2 years ago, things have changed. I don't know where they'll stand, but that's how we did not use it in the budget in the past 2 budget cycles because of that. So it is starting to accumulate, and it will contribute to free cash this year, and we can decide what to do with it. But we have been conservative about that, and my hope has always been that we could take a good percentage of that and put it into capital where we need the money the most.
And to that point, that isn't, it's not, the short-term rental money isn't contemplated into the operating budget at this point for this upcoming year, FY22. And obviously it's not in the capital funding. So it's got to land somewhere. So that cures some of our needs.
Well, what are we doing with OPEB if we're not using those funds to try and put some money into OPEB?
Well,
Well, so-
we had decided to put 130,000 into OPEB every year, but then we
Mhm.
decided that when short-term rental tax came, we would increase that amount and use the short-term rental tax to increase that amount.
So last year, as part of a response to adjusting the budget for COVID, that was one of the things that dropped. But yet we still got the short-term rental money. So to kind of make up for that, probably what, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, and I got to talk to Jack and the finalizing the recommendations, but likely part of what you'll be seeing on the operating budget is appropriating, because I do expect a pretty healthy free cash certification very soon. And so one of the reasons it'll be as healthy as it's going to be is because we did have that short-term rental money that was unbudgeted that came in. And so the idea would be it's the same money, and then we can use that money to fund OPEB and stabilization, kind of making up for the fact that we didn't budget for it this past year.
Great.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so we have that in our, thanks to Russ, we have that in our, toolbox. Just
Yeah.
not to get everyone depressed with the capital presentation. And
Right.
I just want to, obviously you'll all publicly thank Rich. It's just so wonderful to have Rich here, and he's done so much work, and it's taken a huge burden off of my shoulders. And I think you see the depth of the results already, that, I feel like I have a true partner in Rich that can really help us move forward with all of our strategic initiatives, as well as handle some of the big complex capital issues that we have. So, thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Rick.
Yes, thanks. Anybody have any other questions for Rich on this? If none, we'll go to the next item. And I threw together some potential questions that we could write to town departments. I've included in there for DPW, Mary, you wanted to know what was up specifically for Council on Aging in the DPW building. I added the town hall, since we had CPA funds going to town hall, exactly what's happening there. And like I said, when I first sent out the only thing that I'm really wedded to, and if we don't do it in writing, I'm going to ask it straight off, is the first question to the regional schools is, what's the incremental cost of educating school choice students, which we asked last year, and hopefully we may get it by December. Tom had said he might do that, but if we don't have it, that question will be asked. I think we need an answer to it. But so any comments on these kinds of suggestions I threw out, and we can actually, if you like them, we can vote to say, yeah, we're going to ask these questions, or we can cross them off or change them. I have no pride of authorship here. I just put them out for thoughts. Anybody have any comments?
I have some additional things that might.
Okay, we'll go Mary, and then I'll go to George. Go ahead, Mary.
On the DPW, because of some things that I'm aware of, I'm wondering whether they have enough personnel to support the town. They've lost at least one or more folks there, and I think that things aren't being able to be accomplished in a timely manner.
Okay, we can ask that question.
I
Mary?
think there has been a turnover, Mary, but we've replaced all the positions right now.
You have.
So we're at full staff right now. But I think Silvio will tell you that he needs more staff. I mean, we keep adding to his plate, right?
The issue with me is that we are now having to pay over $2,000 to get a small concrete pad put in for our trash compactor, because we have been told that the DPW can't do it for us. And that really,
This the library?
yes.
All right, we can ask that question to Silvio. I don't have any problem with that. Do you have another one, Mary?
It's on the schools.
Yeah.
I'd like to know the status of the solar project at the middle school.
At the middle school? Okay.
Are they planning on putting a solar panels on the parking lot down there?
Okay. Do you have another one?
Wanted to know about the school increase in the students and the percentage and how that's going to affect from a financial perspective.
School, you mean for Eastham itself, or?
Yeah, I think there's an increase in students.
Yeah, our percentage is gonna go up about, Rich, you told me, was it 1 or 2%? We're gonna get a 3% increase in the school budget because of the increase in the number of students that we have and the decrease in the number of students at Orleans, Brewster, and Wellfleet.
Yeah, I forget the exact number, but that approximately is right. Yeah, they're all things being equal, our percentage of participation compared to the other towns increased from last year to this year. And so even if the budget didn't even go up $1, we'd expect our assessment to increase those 2 or 3 percentage points.
Right, and I think those numbers are set on October 30th. Am I correct on that, Rich?
October 1st, we do have that. I can
1.
send that out.
We have the numbers, yeah.
We have, yeah, I think you sent them out already. I think you sent them last meeting.
Basically, Jerry, this year we're Brewster. Last year Brewster got it. This year it's Eastham's turn.
Okay, well, we take turns.
But the tech is okay.
Yeah, we didn't see the tech numbers, so that's one we haven't seen.
Brewster's enrollment in the tech, Peter just told me this morning, has gone up 40%.
Oh, my head.
Wow.
Whoa.
Oh, brand new school.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that could be part of the change in the relative change of students that we have. We might not have had as many go to tech. Brewster did, and so that pulls from Nauset region.
Right.
And goes in there and it changes the numbers there.
Yep.
All right. Did you have another one, Mary?
Oh, I think I'm okay for the moment. Thank you.
George, you had your hand up.
Yes, the high school project. I'd like to know whether, the people who are overseeing this project, whether they anticipate any change in the financial structure for the project because of the delay caused by this whole COVID thing. I can't believe that there wouldn't be a change, and I'm wondering whether they're focusing on it and what they're saying at this point.
Do you think it was higher or lower?
Costs always go down, Mary, right?
As far as I know, the numbers haven't changed in terms of that state commitment is set and not going to change.
Well, I don't expect the state commitment to change. I'm talking about the overall cost.
Cost of the building.
Which means more of it will fall on the shoulders of the regions.
You're talking about construction costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And any other potential costs, but primarily construction costs.
Right. Okay, that's a good question to ask. I will put that together.
Well, financing costs have gone the other way, which is good.
Well, the cost to finance at the moment is dropped, right?
Yeah. Interest rates are low.
Yeah.
Well, they were low from almost the beginning of.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been low.
For the last few years, they've been low. So
Yeah.
Peter's making a good point, but I think, unfortunately, George's concern is probably.
Well, I know.
With water.
I have an update during my report.
Construction costs.
You have an update? Good.
Yeah, I'll do an update of the Nauset Regional Building Project during my town administrator report.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate that. All right, does anyone else have any comments, concern? Russ?
Yeah, just on the stuff that you put together on the school, Jerry.
Yeah.
I went down and picked up the minutes from the Nauset Regional School Committee. Just FYI, there's a new secretary to the Nauset Regional School Committee, Arlen Consiglio. Ann Teft retired. But this is something you may want to look into, Jerry, because I don't think personally that what I'm going to read to you right now is something that is positive or necessary, but you may want to talk to somebody in Brewster. They have a list here on last month's statement. It says, Tom Fitzgibbons reported the Brewster Finance Committee has a subcommittee that created a document on the building project listing pros and cons. It's about a 30-page draft. He indicated they are committed to thinking school choice is a financial burden. It includes questions they feel have not been asked. So maybe this is one of the reasons you haven't seen an answer to yours. I haven't talked to Tom since we had that meeting, but you may want to talk to Tom Fitzgerald because you seem to be interested in that same thing. I think the school choice is a financial positive, very strongly. And I can go into detail with you on that or the committee at any time you want.
Yeah. I will talk to Tom and try and get the that 30-page draft if he's willing to share it with us, because I think that'd be interesting to see what Brewster is saying. I mean, they've got almost 50% of the students, so.
Right, and if they go to, away from, the present building committee, and you go to a 605 student school, as soon as that school is built, the Nauset Regional School budget will lose $3.5 million a year.
Wow.
And it will probably go down. It'll be more. And the reason is that we today, we net $1.1 million, and Brewster gets half of that, $550,000 roughly. We
Yep.
get some smaller percentage.
We get 20%.
Right. If that new school is built, we lose that 1.1 million positive amount of money that we get back from the state. We continue to lose the $700,000 of students going out of here. And we immediately lose the $1.8 million that we take in from school choice. And we will then be absolutely defenseless to take care of the budget, because we will not have any room to take in school choice students. And that's why I think that the people that are looking at this situation, the Brewster people and yourself, are going down the wrong path. The issue that they keep bringing up is that, we trade between the regular schools $5,000, but we kick out roughly $15,000 to Charter Lighthouse School and 23 or 24,000 to Sturgis. But everything is regulated by state law. And that state law is the school choice law. It went into effect 28 years ago. and people have learned how to work with it. Now, obviously, the $5,000 does not represent anywhere near what the cost is. But say we kicked it up to $10,000. Immediately, a school system like Dennis Yarmouth, which is bleeding about $2 million a year, goes to $4 million a year. So there are unintended consequences of moving that number around. And the only way that that can be done is through the state legislature, Sarah Peak and Julian Sir.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I do not think that there is any possible benefit of losing the $36 million with the present
No,
and then going to a smaller school, which will cost the school system $3.6 million a year minimum.
yeah, in the discussions, when I spoke with the chairs of the the 3 other towns, they said all of them agreed that we have to support the school system. It would be fiscally imprudent to turn it down. I don't know what this 30-page draft is. The idea of school choice, some of the ideas people are talking about is you just put the middle school over there, but you take the school and build it, is where they are. And I don't know where they are. We're not asking that. We're just asking for numbers. We'll see what it comes out. I don't know what Brewster does. I'll try and get that draft so everybody knows what it is. But my last understanding with all the finance committees, all of them supported the school building project as is, with the 36 million from the state, and costing us 97 million. I can't remember the exact number. So I don't know what Brewster's saying here, but the last I knew, Brewster Finance was in favor of the school project.
Well,
okay,
based on the letters from to the editor in all the local papers, the two people that are most against it, and they have a whole program on this thing.
Yeah, but they're not on the finance committee. I think that's.
No, they're not on the finance committee.
Jerry, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, Steve.
It's 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
This isn't the time. I mean,
right. It's not. Correct.
We're not considering this issue right now
No.
on parents.
We're just asking questions.
I know, but I think we need to have a separate discussion when you determine it's timely for the committee to have a lengthy and vigorous discussion, but not as a tail end of a meeting that's already 7 o'clock. I feel this is difficult.
I agree. I'm going to try and get that draft and send it around to people if I get it.
Great.
Anybody have any other questions on these? Are these okay? I mean, I try not, who's that, Peter?
Tom.
Tom, yeah.
Yeah, very quickly, Jerry, the questions you put in your draft for police and fire were all about overtime, which
Yes.
Are questions that we ask of them every year. We've done that previously, and that's really for 2 reasons. Number one, it's such a big number. I mean, collectively, between those 2 departments, the overtime number is like $700,000 a year.
Mhm.
And in concept, in basic understanding, overtime is you're paying a premium. Right now, we know that overtime is necessary for departments like this because of the work that they do. But I think the questions that ask, what, if anything, can they do to control those costs, to reduce those costs? Or if there's, I could even reach out and say, is there anything we could do? I'm not sure what that is, but anything we could do to reduce those big numbers would be helpful. This past September at our meeting, Rich came to us with some really great news. He told us that both those departments came in significantly under in their salary budgets. Police came in $92,000 less in overtime. That's a big number. I'm wondering how that happened and can that be replicated? Anything we can do.
And they do it every year, Tom. They did 56,000 the year before. That's why we budget them for what the maximum amount that they would need. And we know that they're going to come in under and return that money to us.
And further, and on that point, I just wanted to mention this briefly because it's likely once it passes final muster with Jackie, when we do our presentation, I'm anticipating that one of the things we'd be asking to fund out of our free cash this year, since we have, is a new fund called a line of duty injury fund. Line of duty injuries is the biggest contributor to overtime, not in any particular year, because if you don't have an injury, then you don't have it. But if you do have an injury, or worst case, or even worse, 2 injuries, and now you've got staffing considerations on one shift, and you're gonna call in 2 or 3 folks on a same shift on overtime, it's a huge impact to the overtime budget, which is usually why they're budgeted high. So the one way to minimize that and prevent yourself from having to budget high numbers every year is to have a line of duty injury fund, and kind of it's almost like self-insuring. Every year you charge your police and fire department, pick a number, say 20 grand a year, to put into that fund that you've seeded with another slug of money. And then if you need it, if you have a line of duty injury that's going to be more than say 7 days or 10 days, you automatically shift the backfilling costs out of the operating budget and out of that fund. And it's like a self-insurance fund. And that way you're funding your overtime on an even level based on anticipated, call volume, as opposed to worrying about that somebody's getting hurt.
That sounds like an excellent idea. Where do you get the original seed money from? From the department itself?
The original seed money would be a free cash ask.
Free cash.
And then I'd start budgeting it in each of their operating budgets on an annual basis thereafter, kind of like an insurance policy.
Well, again, my point was just that I think every year it behooves us to ask both departments about overtime and what, if anything, can be done to control and or reduce those costs. So that, I would say, we'll go with the questions that Jerry has.
Okay. Anybody, any other comments, questions? All right, then let's go to the next item, which is Jackie.
I have two items. One is an update on the Nauset Regional School Building Project. As you know, you have 2 representatives on the committee here, Peter and I. We just met with Tom Conrad, the 4 TAs from the district this morning, and we all anticipate that at tomorrow night's school committee meeting, the school committee will be voting to change the method of voting to a district-wide vote on the project sometime in late March or early April. And that will accompany basically a town election will be on the same day in each 4 towns asking for the debt exclusion vote. This is primarily because we have to have all 4 towns ducks in a row by May 31st, or we will lose the funding. We cannot get another extension from the MSBA. And we don't want to take a risk that COVID might prevent 1 town meeting or 2 towns. So it just seemed like, the writing was on the wall. We have to go to a vote, up or down, we have to go to a vote. And so that I anticipate that the school committee will make that decision tomorrow night. In terms of the construction costs, you are absolutely correct. We cannot change the figure. So the figure, the numbers are locked in by the MSBA. Therefore, even if the Brewster School Committee or anyone else wants to say we need to build a smaller school, we're not going to build a smaller school. We would lose the MSBA money. So that really is a moot discussion. It may be a great discussion to have for future years, but it's not going to impact this building project now. We have to vote it as it is, up or down. The good news, and Rich will talk to you about this if you want. Our interest rates are the best they've been, and they are indeed, Steve, lower than they were 2 years ago. And the financial projections that the school committee bond council or financial advisors, I'm sorry, built that model on that gave you a cost per year were based, I believe, we started at a 5% interest rate and then reduced it to 4%, but it's not going to be 4%. So it will be less per year. The debt service will be less per year than was anticipated. And we've been told by our engineers and project managers that we should not anticipate that the construction costs will be higher, that it seems to be a good bidding environment if we can get the plans done. Now, what happens in the next calendar year, none of us have that crystal ball, but they're suggesting that the numbers are good. But George is right. Once we lock this number in, MSBA won't give us another cent. So any overage would have to go back to the towns for a vote. So that's that one. It may not be good news or bad news. It just is the news. We're going to get this over with one way or the other. And we're also going to have a contingency vote, a warrant article on all 4 towns. If the building project fails at the ballots in March or April, whenever the election is, then we will definitely have town meeting votes to go forward with the smaller project that is just the code compliant project. Which makes no financial sense to anyone, but we cannot go 5 more years with nothing.
Right. Jackie, the district-wide vote, that's it. There's no town meeting votes or anything. There's just the ballot vote. Thank you.
It'll be a simple majority of all 4 towns, and it's the simple majority of the aggregate. Is that the right way?
Right, yeah.
It's not, Brewster won't have a separate 2/3 and us a simple majority. It's all one. And then we'll have a ballot question that will exclude the debt, because obviously we can't afford the debt service on $22 million without, asking for that. So it marches forward.
Same format as the Cape Tech
Exactly.
project.
Right.
Exactly. And it does sort of, there's something refreshing about it because it's all over in a day. And we know where we stand at the end of that day. And I think that's so much better than going to 4 different towns, making 4 different pitches with, I think there's a certain simplicity to it that I think during COVID is the better way to go. And the second piece of news is very good news for Eastham, which is one of our marijuana dispensaries, Emerald Grove, has reached the final state licensing process, and they anticipate that they will be receiving their final go-ahead sometime in late January and should be open for business February 1st. Wow. Is what they're shooting for. They have totally finished all the renovations of the building and they're set to go. So they're just waiting for final state inspections. All the local inspections are done.
Jackie,
so that should give us some revenue for FY23.
Jack, is this recreational or recreational and medicinal? Which one? Or
remember that Emerald Grove is doing both. They have a license to do both. Yeah.
So this would open it up to both.
With just medicinal, didn't they? Didn't they start out with just medicinal, and then when they moved to the Cape Cod dog, that it increased it to the recreation?
Okay. All right. Is that it, Jackie?
How long we wait?
How long was the wait?
Okay.
3.5 years.
I said I could hardly wait.
Oh.
A long dry spell.
All right. Okay. Anybody have any other questions for Jackie or anything?
I do.
I just want to say one thing. I'm really glad to be here in Eastham as I read in the Provincetown Independent the kind of problems the town manager,
Yeah,
the
it's
town
terrible.
administrators have in the other towns. The arguments with people saying nasty things on Facebook and so forth, or other people's in committees and so forth. And I don't think we have, who knows, he may be saying lots of things about me behind my back, but I just think it's wonderful looking, and it's a compliment to you, Jackie, to Rich, and to everyone on this committee, on the select board and other committees within Eastham. I think it's wonderful, and I just wanted to publicly state that.
Thank you, Jerry. I think we're all really feeling grateful for Eastham, and the people of Eastham are just different. I don't know whether it's the turnips or what it is, but I used to have an Italian boss who, when he got really mad at me, he would scream, "Jackie, the fish stinks from the head." And I would be like, "I'm the neck, Frank, you're the head." But I think in this case, really, we have, for the first time in a long time, and I've had the privilege of working for 3 boards of selectmen, right? So they've all been good, but this one is so much more cohesive, and that cohesion really matters. You know, they can disagree, they can have their things and move on, but we have teamwork from the top and the middle and the staff and the populace. You know, I think residents want us to succeed too, which is not true in some other towns. So I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, all
So
right.
thank you.
Thank you. And now, anyone have any new business?
I have a question for Jackie.
Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Jackie, back to the Nauset Regional, the new high school. What is the date that the percentage for Eastham is going to be determined on? Because I know we've got more students now than before.
It already
So
was.
the way they do the debt service for the tech, and I assume it'll be the same, I don't know, Rich, you can, but I'm assuming it's going to be the same, is the debt service gets recalculated every year
Every
based
year.
on your enrollment.
Oh,
So,
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's October 1st.
Yep.
October-
Right.
Yep. Anything else? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Thank you.
Okay, that was, let's see, that was George, I think?
No,
No,
Russ,
no, we're unanimous.
No,
I want to keep
it was
the meeting going.
And Steve, okay, I've got to go through this. Russ,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Peter,
yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
and Jerry is a yes, 6-0. Thank you very much. Go ahead and enjoy your dinner.